All right, so just now that I'm recording, just a reminder again with the final exam, make sure you know it has different times. It opens Sunday, December 6th, and closes Wednesday, December 9th. Any questions on what is due this week as far as juvenile justice in Chapter 10 and the survey, and the final exam as far as when it opens and when it closes? All right, well, that is pretty easy. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and get started on our PowerPoint, which is Chapter 10 on juvenile justice then. All right, so how and what do we know about juveniles when we're going in and talking about juvenile justice? What I'm going to do in these first 2 pages is pretty much go over an outline of what we're going to be talking about during this PowerPoint presentation. We're going to go over the measurement of juvenile crime. We're going to talk about what we know about the extent of juvenile crime and what type of crime juveniles are committing. We're going to talk about the UCR, because how do we know about what type of crimes juveniles are committing? Well, we know about it through the UCR, which is the Uniform Crime Reports. Also through juvenile court statistics, so looking at the juvenile courts. We also know about it through victimization surveys, because we have found that a lot of times there's a lot of crime occurring that's not captured, either due to people not reporting it or the suspects not being caught. So we go to the victims, and so we're capturing it that way. We also are looking at what we call self-report and cohort measures of juvenile crime, and we're going to talk about those and explain those later in the presentation. We're also going to look at the dimensions of law-violating behaviors and what those are in relation to juveniles. The age of onset, as far as when those law-violating behaviors begin. When do juveniles start to escalate those behaviors? I mean, does it just all of a sudden that a juvenile says, oh, I want to steal a piece of candy from a convenience store, and then all of a sudden, oh, I'm going to shoot somebody? How does that escalation work? And is there any specialization of offenses? Does a juvenile just kind of decide, I want to commit a certain type of crime? Is it random? Is it not? And desistance from crime, does it just stop all of a sudden? Is it the same for all juveniles? And is there a transition when a juvenile becomes an adult? We're also going to look at where do juveniles victims come from, the family and the victimization of children, and how that has an effect. Also the school and victimization. So that's kind of pretty much an outline, these 2 different pages, as far as what we're going to be looking at throughout this chapter 10, and throughout this presentation. All right, so let's get started. What are the types of official measurements of juvenile crime? So when we're looking at juvenile crime, is it just something I made up in my head? Tiffany, where'd you get all this? Or where did Chapter 10 get all this? Or did the Google just make it up? Well, where are the types of official measurements of juvenile crime coming from? Well, they're coming from what we call the UCR. And it's, it's the one time I hate sometimes all of these different UCRs, but UCR is, and what I mean by UCR and FBI, and we have so many different acronyms out there these days. Everybody has an acronym for everything. But just kind of like FBI has been around for a while, UCR has been around, and it is the Uniform Crime Reports, and it's been around a while, and it's where your law enforcement agencies report to the FBI statistics. And it's not just juvenile statistics, it's all different kinds of statistics, but they do report juvenile court statistics, and they get their statistics and national victimization surveys from 3 different sources. And the Uniform Crime Reports and Juvenile Court Statistics are based on the tabulation of data collected from the police and juvenile courts. So it's pretty good as far as giving us an overall idea. Now, it's not perfect and it doesn't tell us everything, but it definitely gives us a good idea as far as, hey, what the official measurements of juvenile crime is going on out there. We also then, like I told you earlier, we also look at the National Victimization Surveys to say, okay, hey, you know, victims, what else is going on out there? Because we realize that there's an official measurement out there, but we realize there's also victims out there, and we realize that there's also other things that are going on that may not be captured officially that we want to know that's going on. All right, so what is the UCR, the Uniform Crime Reports, and its findings? And it's soon to be in 2021, just so you know, because I don't want you to say, well, Professor Mori told us it's called the UCR, or the Uniform Crime Reports, because in 2021 it's changing and it's going to be called the NBRIS. So again, UCR is changing to the NBRIS, and we're going to talk about that, and I'll show you a picture of the website and what that looks like. So UCR has been around for a while. It actually was authorized by Congress in the 1930s and designated to the FBI to implement the program. And it was based on efforts started by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, so the IACP. And it divides crimes basically into 2 parts. And it's what we call Part 1 crimes and Part 2 crimes. Part 1 crimes are what we consider the most serious offenses. So it's when you have the courts and you have police reporting Part 1 crimes, they're the most serious offenses. So they're murder, they're rape, robbery, aggravated assaults. Those are your most serious offenses. And then you have what we call Part 2 crimes. And those are your more less serious offenses. So that's your simple assaults, forgery, embezzlement, things like that. So, and sorry, in your Part 1 crimes are also your property offenses, which are your burglary, larceny, motor vehicle, theft. And those were added basically in your late 70s, 1979. So that's why when you hear UCR, you have your Part 1 crimes and Part 2 crimes. All right, so here is your UCR. And as you can kind of see right here, are you ready? So that's what it's going to be called, NIBRS in 2021. And that stands for the National Incident-Based Report System. So they're kind of changing it over a little bit. And if you want to go look at it you guys have this PowerPoint in Moodle, and I've actually made this linked in there through a hyperlink. So you can actually go look at this. And here it is again with a hyperlink that says what it's called and what it's going to change over. And I think they call it NIBRS now. So instead of being called UCR, they're going to call it NIBRS. So again, everything has a nice little acronym. Okay, so UCR, like I said, does have its limitations, okay, because of the fact that it's based on crimes reported to the police. So if you don't report a crime to the police, then we're not going to capture it. Can you guys think of anything? Can anybody unmute and think of a time when someone may not call the police and may not report a crime to the police?
Domestic violence.
I'm sorry, a what?
DV.
Yeah, domestic violence. So somebody may be scared. Somebody may be scared of the person who injured them, and they may not even report it. Let's say it was a mom and their child's 17 years old and they're scared. They may not even report it. Or let's say, anybody have any other examples?
If the person was somehow like involved in the crime as well and they could get in trouble.
Very good. Somebody's involved in the crime and they're scared they're going to get arrested. Yeah, very good. Anything else?
Rape.
Somebody's been raped and they're scared they're going to be victimized again by the police. They're scared that they're going to be said it's their fault or whatever the reason. Exactly.
Maybe they don't know it's a crime.
Good one. They don't even know it's a crime. Don't even know it's a crime. Excellent. You guys are bringing up excellent ones. Or how about if somebody's here and they've come over the border and they're not here, they're over here and they aren't here legally, and they're scared that they're going to get deported, and so they don't want to call the police, and their house has been broken into by a juvenile. They may not call the police and report it. So you can have lots of different reasons. So again, the crime has to be reported in order for it to be tallied into the UCR. So that's one of the biggest limitations. So also, police typically arrest offenders that commit serious crimes and not the minor ones. So, and I got to tell you, I did this. A lot of times I would go out, and if I had a juvenile that had stolen something, a lot of times I would just call their parents and say, hey, here you go. This is something this juvenile does not belong in the system. This juvenile belongs with their parent. So how many times did I do that? A lot. So many, many times that juvenile never went to the system. So it never was reported to the police, and it never got a report, and it never ended up in UCR. So how many different officers across the United States are doing that where we really don't know what's really happening? Crime rates may appear inflated because, again, youthful offenders are easier to catch. So again, it may seem like more is happening than not. And youth generally commit crimes in groups. So the reporting of group crimes may be overestimated. And then due to the hierarchy rule, only the most serious crime is counted. So, all these things can really skew what the UCR is telling us. And okay, so what are juvenile court statistics and what do they cover? So I just kind of talked to you about what the police are reporting to the UCR. So what are the juvenile court statistics? Because like I said, UCR gets its numbers from the police and they get their numbers from the juvenile courts. So what does the juvenile court statistics cover? When and where were they developed? Well, they were developed in 1929, so it's been a long time we've been doing this. And to learn about the nature and extent of problems coming before the courts, to show the nature and extent of services provided by the court, so trends could be identified, and to show the extent that services have been effective. So basically, the court's trying to show, hey, this is what we're doing. We're trying to make a difference. We're trying to rehabilitate. We're trying to show, what's going on. And as you guys know, status offenses are things that juveniles can only do as soon as you become adult. You can't run away. You can't not go to school. So they're only things that juveniles can do. And then we have delinquency offenses, same kind of things. So what are some of the main findings of the juvenile courts? Well, they find that delinquency increases with age. So they find as juveniles get older, the crime that the juvenile does goes up, meaning they may start out stealing something small, and as they get older, it gets larger. Juvenile courts process 4 times as many cases in 2002 than in 1960. So it looks like juveniles were definitely engaged in more crime in the millennium than they were in 1960. And it looks like ungovernability and truancy, basically uncontrollability of juveniles, declines at age 15, but liquor law violations continue to increase. Males are referred to juvenile court more frequently than females. Okay. Females are referred to juvenile court for truancy and ungovernability at the same rate as males, though female rates are increasing relative to males. Okay. And white males are referred to juvenile court in numbers relative to their proportion of the population, but African American were referred at rates disproportionately. All right, so I'm going to stop here because we're going to do something a little interesting. All right, so I'm going to tell you a story, and I want you to pay attention about two kids, okay? And I'll tell you why I want you to pay attention, because we're going to do some group work, and I'm going to give you guys some roles. So it's important that you pay attention. I'm going to tell you about Jesus and Marquise, okay? Both of them are in prison, okay, because they were tried as adults. These are true stories. And we're later going to watch about them. We're going to watch stories about them. So Jesus is serving a 65-year sentence right now, okay? He was convicted of murder. He shot and killed a 16-year-old victim, okay? He just one day got mad, and he just, you know, now he kind of regrets it, but he just was not happy. He's trying to do good in prison. And even with good behavior, the soonest he could get out would be when he is 49 years of age, because according to the parole board where he's at, he still, with good behavior, has to serve at least half of his sentence. And if you remember, he got 65 years. He got sentenced to 65 years because he pretty much shot a 16-year-old. When he was a juvenile, he got shot. He shot a 16-year-old child in cold blood. But he was 16 years old himself, and so they tried him as an adult. All right, so that's Jesus. We'll come back to Jesus. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Marquise. Marquise was home. His mom was home. His uncle, which is his mom's brother, was home. And the victim came over and hit his mom. And he got mad because that's his mom. And so he got a gun. He was 16. He got a gun. And so his mom and his uncle guy had a gun too, went over and found the victim, and he shot the victim. And the first shot to the victim went in the victim's back and paralyzed the victim, couldn't walk. And then his uncle shot the victim, and it killed the victim. So because of that, does anybody want to know what he was tried with? Okay, does anybody want to guess? And I'll tell you that again, I'll repeat it. Marquise, who was 16 at the time, was tried as an adult. And when Marquise shot the victim, he shot him once in the back and paralyzed the victim. And then his uncle shot the victim, and the second shot killed him. So does anybody want to know what he was charged with and convicted with? Any guesses? Well, I'll tell you. He was actually convicted of aggravated battery, okay? Not murder, because it was actually the uncle's, what the prosecutor went with, it was the uncle that was charged with the murder, because it was the uncle's gunshot that murdered him. So Marquise is serving 15 years in prison. He was charged as an adult. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in breakout rooms. What I haven't told you is what role you're going to play. Okay, and so you're going to play a couple different roles. And the role you're going to play is, you're either going to play the role of, and you're going to argue, okay? There's going to be 4 different roles, okay? One is going to be the role of the family member, which means you're either going to be the family member of the victim that is now dead, either the victim that is now dead, either Jesus's, the 16-year-old that Jesus shot and killed, either his parent or his brother or his sister, or you're going to be the victim's brother, sister, or parent that Marquise paralyzed and then the uncle shot and killed brother, sister, or parent. Or you're going to be the prosecutor that tried the case and convicted him, or you're going to be Jesus's or Marquise's defense attorney that represented him at trial, or you're going to be Jesus's or Marquise's parent. Okay? I won't know that until I put you in your breakout room, and I'll let you know what role you have. And when you're in those rooms, you're going to be together, and then you're going to be arguing, okay, for either getting out in the next 5 years or serving at least half of their sentence. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay, so I won't know. Let me get your rooms. I won't know until I put you in rooms. You'll still be here with me. Once I know what rooms you're in, I will tell you what room you're in and what role you're playing. So hang tight with me for 1 minute. Got to get your rooms going until I know. Okay, so you're going to have to unmute yourself when I tell you what role you're going to be playing. Okay. All right, so Graydon, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so Graydon, you're going to be in room 1, and Graydon, you're going to be the defense attorney for Marquise. So that means you're his attorney that fought for him in court. Patrick.
Yep.
You're going to be Marquise's dad. Okay, Sophia.
Yep.
You're in room 1, and you're going to be Marquise's sister.
Okay.
And Tatum?
Yeah.
You are going to be Marquise's, you're the prosecutor that convicted him.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so you guys can go ahead and go to breakout room 1. Okay, Bailey, are you there?
Yeah.
All right. Bailey, you are going to be the defense attorney. You're going to be in room 2, and you're going to be the defense attorney for Marquise that represented him in court. Okay.
Okay.
Jonah, are you there?
Yes.
Jonah, you are going to be in room 2, and you are going to be the parent of Marquise.
Okay.
And then Monica, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, you're going to be in room 2, and you're going to be the prosecutor that convicted Marquise. Okay? All right, you guys can go off to room number 2. All right, Lizzie.
Yeah.
All right, Lizzie, you are going to be the attorney for Jesus. I guess we're going to find out, huh? All right, so let's start with, we're going to kind of go in order that I signed them, since each room kind of got a little bit more time. So let's start with room 1. And let's start with, let's kind of go with let's go with Graydon and Patrick. Let's kind of go with the defense and the parent side. So what were you guys going for? What were you guys fighting for? I think I kind of know, but what were you fighting for?
We both agreed that shorter sentence or him getting off completely would be the best option.
Okay. Okay. How'd that go?
We didn't have much backlash from the defense side for it, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, we thought that since it was somebody who came in and started like just kind of beating up on his mom, it was almost a self-defense thing. And since he was only a juvenile who didn't actually make the shot that killed the victim, then he shouldn't be charged for it.
I probably didn't explain that right. It was 2 different events. Does that change your guys' opinion if it was 2 different events? Sorry. That's probably not good storytelling on my part. Yeah, 2 different events. But does that change anybody's opinion if it's 2 different events? So it wasn't a self-defense, not a self-defense. It was he hit the mom and then he kind of decided at a later time, you don't hit my mom. And so at a later time went to kind of, you don't hit my mom kind of thing. So.
That makes more sense.
Uh-oh, sorry.
Yeah, that changes it a little bit, I
Yeah, that
guess.
definitely changes it a little bit.
Uh-oh, sorry. So no, not, and remember folks, not to use the self-defense kind of thing, but don't you remember from the very beginning us talking about self-defense? And I remember this class we've talked about the difference, what self-defense is. Self-defense isn't you hit me, so because you hit me, self-defense is I have to hit you back. Remember, what is self-defense? And so are you saying, and let me make sure I'm hearing you right, they hit his mom, so self-defense is shoot him in the back and paralyze him? I want to make sure I heard you right. Is that correct? Hold on, Patrick.
I mean,
I don't, not to put you on the spot, Patrick, but I want to make sure I heard you right. You hit my mom, so self-defense is I shoot you in the back and paralyze you?
I mean, the way I was thinking of it is that it's like a kind of fight situation happening where it's just like a big brawl, and then the kid sees it and he's like, oh my God, somebody's beating up my mom right now. I'm going to shoot him. So then it just happens like really in the heat of the moment. But then now that you say that it's 2 completely separate events, it changes things. But since my role is the father still, I would still probably be on my kid's side no matter what.
I love this. And so, yes, you are bringing up exactly what happens, right? What did you just say that again? Because your role as the father.
Because
right?
I'm the father in this situation, I'm going to have a biased opinion, obviously.
Biased opinion. Ooh, okay. Is it hard to not have a bias? What do you guys think? Is it hard to have not a biased opinion if you're a parent? Who's a parent? Are you guys a parent yet? Is anybody a parent?
I have a dog, so yes.
Who was going to say no? You can't have a biased opinion. Who was going to say no?
Unless you hate your child, then you mean
That's still biased,
The
just that
parent, that is
direction.
impossible. You never hate your child, just to clarify. As a parent, that's not possible.
You know, so no one's saying anything. Come on.
I mean,
Do you think, how many of you guys think ever somebody would ever, I mean, I'm a parent and I don't think I would ever find a reason that anybody would hurt my child that I would think it's okay. You know, I mean, that's my child. Oh my gosh, you know, so that's, I'm sure there's so many memes out there. Mother bear comes out, you know, rawr, you know, I mean, it's true. There's a reason there's those memes out there. So, you know, I'm hoping what you're seeing and what I was hoping, and I know it's hard for this to happen, but I'm hoping in some of the groups, and maybe I'll just go to those groups that this happened. If it didn't happen, I'm hoping in some of the groups what happened was if you took it seriously, this should have happened, which was kind of what Patrick said, which was, it's my son, so I should have had some bias as far as that goes. If you're being honest, you should have. In my introduction to law enforcement class, we talk about an oral board question that comes up on law enforcement tests that says, okay, does somebody have, oh, there's a little, what do you have in that picture? Okay, that is she's
She's a
Jade,
bearded dragon.
Aw, bearded dragons. I love bearded dragons. You know, I brought my bearded dragon to class one time, and one of my students was deathly afraid. He like zoomed to the back of the class. And I'm like, it's a bearded dragon. They're the sweetest things. So anyhow, but anyway, to get back. So I forget what I'm on now. The bearded dragon totally got me off of topic. Gosh. So
You're
anyhow,
talking about bias
thank
with
you. Thank you. So, but you know, when I asked this question to students, one of the questions that comes up on the oral board is, would you cite, if you pulled over somebody for speeding, you didn't recognize the car, and the car was going 15 miles over the speed limit, and you walked up and it was your mother, would you ticket them? And it's so funny because all these students sit there and go, yes. And I'm like, it's your mother. And they're like, yes. And I'm like, it's your mother. Didn't we? And we had just gone through talking about discretion and how police have discretion. And they're just like, and I'm like, and we had just gone through talking about how we want our police to be honest. And I'm like, you're sitting on an oral board, okay, where they want you to be honest, and you're telling them you're going to cite your mother. No, you're more worried that they want you to cite your mother. So you're answering how you think the oral board wants you to answer. If you were a real cop on the street and you pulled over your mother, which I hope you love, because I mean, I love my mother. I mean, she raised, oh my gosh, my poor mother, all she put up with me, right? All that she went through with me. Oh my gosh, right? I'm hoping I should say something like, Mom, you know, you can't do that. You can't put me in this situation. Don't you ever dare speak. If you ever again, I have to, you know, I have to ticket you. You know, you go through something like that, right? Right? How many of you, if you were a cop, would warn your mother and say, you've put me in a really bad position, right? How many of you, right? We all should be shaking our heads, right? You're going to warn your mother, right? Yes, exactly. You know, now, if you're not going to warn your mother, I would say you probably don't have a very good relationship with your mother in the first place. Okay. Because but most of you would say, then I'm going to ask you, how many of you have ever been warned by the police? If you've ever been warned by the police, that's a normal thing. You want to warn by the police. Yes, that's what we want. So anyhow, it goes on this same type of thing. Be honest. So did anybody have any one of these relationships in our groups where you had a conflict because of a relationship? Or did everybody just say, we want to let everybody out and rehabilitate them?
Here's the thing though, it's like, with the other perspective, I would believe that, you know, with the bias, there's some, like, I brought up this example. There was a school shooting last November. It was at Saugus High School. I went to that school. I knew people that were there. I didn't know the victims, but I knew, you know, like the basic people who went there. And everyone went after their family, because the kid had, you know, shot himself instead of going through arrest. And everyone went after the family. And, you know, people were destroying their house, protesting outside their house because, you know, they were so angry that this had happened, you know, because you look at it on the news and you're like, oh, this won't happen to me. You know, this won't happen to my kids. Yet it did, you know, and it's scary to the fact that it's like, oh yeah, this is in my neighborhood, this is down my street. But, you know, the parents did not agree, did not understand, you know. It's also cases with serial killers. The parents do not agree that, oh, I did not raise my child like that. This is completely not what I wanted for my kid yet, you know, so that kind of argues against a bias, what I'm trying to get at. It's like, some people, you know, depending on the crime, most of the time parents will be like, I don't know what happened to them. I didn't do this, you know, so they're like, you know, do what you need to do. So
what about the parents of Jonah, Andrea, Jade, or Hector? Hector, I'm going to pick on you. Hector,
Yes.
Jesus shot your brother. Did you argue for him getting out? What'd you argue for?
Yeah, I said that I was gonna say that I did it and that I framed him.
That you did.
We kind of decided that because we kind of just looked at all our common goals, all the people in our breakout room, and I'm trying to get my man Jesus out of jail. And then we had Hector, who's his brother, and then I'm trying to see who else was in my breakout room. And we had someone who's trying to prosecute the murder. So we decided that Hector would admit to murdering someone and then framing his brother Jesus. That way, Jesus got out of jail, and
Okay, so that got confusing because Hector was
right.
the brother. Hector was the victim's brother.
The victim's brother?
Oh, we thought I was
We had the wrong case then.
yeah.
So okay, so see, so this is what we were trying to get. So that's why I was trying to get the whole that's what I meant. So I get where you're going, Rylan, as far as that went. I get where you're going with being the parent of somebody who murders somebody. What I mean is, what if you're the parent of somebody who gets murdered? Does that make sense? So you guys were saying, so what we're fighting against, what I was trying to see was, here's Jesus serving 65 years for murdering a 16-year-old, okay? And so some of you guys were trying to get Jesus out of prison within the next couple years. And I'm saying, what about his brother, his mother and dad of the 16-year-old that was murdered? Do you think they want Jesus to stay in prison or get out of prison?
Oh,
I
probably
want you to look at all sides. Does that make sense, everybody? I want everybody to see that there's just, that it's not as simple as we think it is. Because what I saw as a cop and what you see in the criminal justice world when you start seeing those 3 C's is you just don't see one side. You just don't see the cop side. You just don't see the court side, and you just don't see the rehabilitation side. What you see is all of it, and that's where it gets scary, folks, and that's where it gets confusing as well. Because unfortunately, right when you think you have it all handled, right when you go, okay, I get it, I have the answer, another prong sticks its head out and goes, what about me? And so that's what I'm saying is, right when you think I've got it handled, here's the answer with rehabilitation, then the victim, the 16-year-old brother, steps out and says, what about my brother that was killed? Do you get where I'm going with this? So I'm just saying, don't forget about all of, it's kind of like chess. When you have a chess game, everybody watching Queen's Gambit now on Netflix, you know, it's so popular right now. It's like all those different pawns are on the board. The American criminal justice system is no different. You can't look at the American criminal justice system and think there's only 3 pawns on the board, because there's not. There's all those pawns on the board. And as soon as you forget about one of them, you've forgotten about everything. And so that's what I'm trying to tell you. And when you go into those groups and you think, and all of you guys, if you weren't arguing in those groups, you were doing something wrong, is what I'm trying to tell you. Okay? If all of you guys were agreeing, you're doing something wrong. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that and why that is? If you don't understand, and do you understand why? Because we should be fighting for Jesus, who's serving 65 years because he's a juvenile that made a mistake. Why did he kill somebody? Why did he shoot a 16-year-old? Okay, who's fighting for Jesus? Does everybody see that? So who was arguing in your groups that had Jesus? Who was arguing for Jesus? Okay, next, who was arguing for the 16-year-old victim, his brother, his parents, because he's dead. So he's not going to have any kids. His brother doesn't have a brother. His sister doesn't have a sister. He's not going to have any, his parents aren't going to have any grandchildren for him. Do you see what I mean? Do you start to see who's arguing for them anymore? Do you see what I mean by all those pawns on the board? Who's arguing for them? Everybody lost in that. So we need to be arguing for all of them, for Jesus, who's lost, who's not going to get out until he's 49 at the youngest with good behavior. For the 16-year-old that Jesus killed, who he murdered. Why did he murder him? What are we doing to rehabilitate Jesus? What are we doing for Jesus's victim, his 16-year-old victim? What are we doing for his family? Do you think that affected his family? Jesus, the victim that he killed, the 16-year-old that he killed, what are we doing for that family? Do you see what I mean? Do you see how this goes so deep? That's what I'm talking about. So we need to be thinking, and you all need to be thinking about that. How has our criminal justice system, that cops, courts, and corrections dealt with all of that? We haven't. I guarantee you right now, unless we had somebody special at cops, courts, or somewhere that really went the extra mile, have we taken Jesus's murdered victim and have we gone to that murdered victim's family and offered some type of therapy? Because there's just not the funding there. There's not a lot of stuff there. Like I said to you guys, you're the next generation of making sure it's there so that those family members and the young ones in those family members aren't touched by this somehow. Does that make sense? Do you get where I'm coming from? Okay. Now, does anybody else want to add anything as far as what you said in your groups? The main thing I wanted to get out was how everybody should be arguing about this, because this should be touching everybody in some way or another. And unless you have been through this somehow or some way and been touched by this, you can't understand that. And the only reason I'm touched by this, I haven't had anybody murdered or had somebody murder somebody, but I've seen it. I've been in courtrooms and I've been around that, and it's hard to see. So let's go watch these court cases. Let's go watch Jesus and Marquise. You guys hear that? Will somebody say yeah?
Majority of teenagers at Wabash are in for sentences of 10 years or less. However, being tried as adults means that those who have committed horrific crimes will spend much of their life in prison.
I'm Jesus from State of Perez. I'm 17 years old, and I got sentenced to 65 years for murder.
Jesus has been involved in gangs from a young age.
I've been jumped, I've been hit with bats, I got stabbed in my leg, I've been shot at. Ain't nothing new to me. Like, I see this every day. Like, feel me? I live this life. Feel me? It ain't nothing. So I never got shot though, surprisingly.
One June evening, out driving with friends in his hometown of Elkhart, he spotted a rival and an argument began.
He was throwing gang signs or something. And he said, like, I don't know, he said something. I got possessed or something, like something came over me. That's when I felt like something just, that's when I felt that.
In a fit of anger, Jesus fired one shot.
I seen his face too, like, I remember seeing him like, you know, surprise face.
"16-year-old Braxton Barhams was dead.
I know it, like, me and him didn't get along, but damn, I just took his life. Like, what the fuck, what did I just do?
Jesus is now spending 65 years at Wabash, reflecting on that one moment.
I guess I don't like talking about it or something.
What's the main reason you think you didn't like talking about it?
Because that's what changed my life. That's what Feel me? That's what changed everything. That's like, feel like when that happened, my life stopped too. Like, feel me? Cause I don't know, like everything else is like just gone.
The teenagers at Wabash get 1 hour of recreation in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. Part of the staff's philosophy not to punish, but to rehabilitate.
Hell no! If you have just punishment and no rehabilitation, then you're doing nothing. You're just housing people, and you know, you're not helping them turn around, and then you're going to dump them back onto society. So basically, you just shot yourself in the foot, because they're going to go out and be the very same they were when they come in, and maybe worse.
I'm tired of being locked up. I'm in the penitentiary. Ain't got no money on my books and I'm so hungry. Man, I'm locked up. I'm Marquise Lee. I'm 18 years old. And I got 15 years for aggravated battery. For the better, cause I'm tired of talking to my people through these letters. Man, I'm locked up. I'm trying to make it in the industry. I'm trying to get big. You feel me? I'm always gonna, you feel me, remember where I came from. I ain't gonna never forget where I came from. You feel me? Where I grew up in the hood. You feel me? It's positive. I'm trying to make it to the top. Crazy, I ain't even.
Marquise was 16 and on probation for theft when he committed his crime, for which he was tried as an adult.
Some people say it ain't fair because we underage. But then again, I'll be like, you feel me? We did you ever heard of the saying, you feel me? You can do the crime, do the time. You feel me? So that's why I'm like, you feel me? I did it. So, I mean, I'm owning up to what you feel me? They charged me like I was a man. I'm going to step up like a man and do my time.
The victim had assaulted Marquise's mother, so he decided to get revenge with his accomplices, his uncle and mother.
Excited. I was just trying to get to him. I was ready to get to him more than what I already did. I just wanted him. I wanted him to know, like, he had the right one this time. Like he messed up. I wanted him to know that, like, yeah, you're not finna get away with this. So I'm finna get you. I ran up on him and we just got the fist fight. We got to fighting, and he fell. I dropped him. He fell and he crawled to the door. That's when I seen the chance. So you feel me? I took out the gun. I shot him. Wow. When I shot him, he dropped. The first shot, when I learned in court, first shot hit him in the back and the spinal cord, and it paralyzed him.
His uncle then also fired. The victim died at the scene.
He got what he deserves. That's how I was feeling. Like, you feel me? If he dead, he dead. If he just got shot, you feel me? He deserved what I gave him. You feel me? He shouldn't have hit my mama.
Marquise recently turned 18 and is due to move up to adult prison. However, he's been allowed to stay in the juvenile unit in order to complete his education, as long as he avoids getting written up.
For the past 6 months, he's essentially stayed out of trouble. This is part of our reward program. At 180 days, they're entitled to get a loaner TV and an hour of extra record weekend.
There's motivation to not get in trouble. You know, get thinking like, oh man, I don't want to lose my TV. So if I could stick to that, you know, I'm gonna be straight.
Responsible for this. All right. Okay. You are now proud owner of a TV. Take it back to yourself. Dealing with children here is different from the adults because you do tend to adopt a parental role. I don't know all their stories. I don't know all their home lives. I don't know if they think of me as a father. I think some of them do. And I have to fulfill that obligation to them as well as do my custody position. Be what they need to grow. You have cable? I don't want to see any of them come back if they go out onto the civilian population. And I take that responsibility very seriously.
From reward programs through to mandatory schooling, the staff inside the juvenile unit of Wabash attempt to provide as stable a life as possible for the boys in their care.
4 multiplied by a number plus 6 equals 46.
But some of these are teenagers trying to cope emotionally with long sentences. Indiana law states that with good behavior, an inmate has to serve a minimum of half their sentence, leaving Jesus Macedo Perez still facing being in prison until he's at least 49 years old.
I'm not calm about it, but I'm as calm as it'll get. People just try to kill themselves or go crazy like they, you feel me? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, motherfuckers ain't the same. I ain't the same no more. But I'm not trying to deal with it like that. I'm not trying to go nuts. I'm not trying to kill myself. I still got, even though I'm here, I still got something to live for.
Jesus is looking for any way to shorten his sentence.
Hey, how you doing?
For advice, he's come to casework manager Alita Burnett.
Everything goes into play, as I told you from the very beginning. Conduct. So you keep your conduct, you keep going to school, get everything you can so they see you're trying to improve your life. Then you can try to get some of these things. It's tough, I know. I can see it in your eyes that you're upset.
Whatever I can do, if it's just like one thing I can do, I'm gonna try to do that one thing.
But don't get all down in the dumps yet. You're gonna make the best you can of everything, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, just because I can't run out here and save you for this, that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in which way you're going. Okay, that'll work?
Yeah.
Okay,
All right,
we're
thank
good.
you.
All right. I just can't even imagine being that young and being in that situation. It just doesn't even compute with my mind. I just see it, but it still doesn't compute. I think he'll be okay, but I mean, I would be devastated. But of course, I've never put myself in that position.
Having worked in the unit for 7 years, Alita sees how a child's upbringing can ultimately lead to a crime that puts them behind bars.
They come from families that, you know, we have generations of this stuff going on, generations of the drugs, generations of prison, and you know, it's sad. You know, we have several in there right now that has seen a parent kill the other parent, and then we wonder, you know, it's almost heartbreaking in some ways. You know, some of the things these young little kids have gone through.
All right. So so any suggestions? What do we do to solve it?
I was gonna say, I think there definitely has to be more intervention, like at a younger age, more outreach opportunities to prevent kids from starting that lifestyle from the beginning.
Good. So any other ideas?
I was really hearing with what Jesus was saying. He just there was kind of like a sense of hopelessness for him. You know what I was saying? And as someone who's had family spend a lot of life in jail, I really wish that there were a lot more skills open for inmates to learn. For like one of my uncles, he was able to learn how to weld. And then when he got out of jail, it was something he could work toward and he was able to make a lot of money. But then another one, he didn't have much opportunities like that. He was older, so he couldn't go to school. So I wish there were more skills that they could learn. That way they could have a purpose. They're learning a skill. And then when they do get out, they'll have something going for them. And I know there are some programs like that, but I just wish there were more options. Because I don't know, Jesus just seemed really like really felt like he just there's some hopelessness. You know, he was talking about the people who, you know, look to kill themselves, and I just feel like, you know, my heart just goes out to him, and I just wish there was there were more opportunities for him to invest back into himself.
And it depends, you know, like we've talked about public and private prisons, and it depends where you're at and what state you're at and whether it is. And so all of that and again, it's so much bigger, and there's so many more things that go into whether those opportunities exist or not. So it's just so much more in depth than that. But yeah, good point. Great point. All right, anybody else? Any other thoughts? All right, we're going to get back to the PowerPoint. So give me 1 second. All right, the rest of this video is on your PowerPoint on Moodle that you guys have. If you want to watch it, I totally recommend it. It's great. It's, I think, 46 minutes. I only played just I think it was about 10 minutes for you guys. So I highly recommend it. All right, so we just got done talking about UCR, or what's going to be in 2021 NIBRS, and that it's very formal, and that if you don't report a crime, that it's not captured. And you guys gave me some great examples of why you wouldn't report a crime. And so we've tried to capture what we call victimization surveys. And we've tried to capture those non-reported crimes. And so we're going to talk about those right now. We call those National Crime Victimization Surveys. This is a picture of the Bureau of Justice Statistics, and it's NCVS. And what it is it's a way that the US Department of Justice tries to go out there, and instead of getting information through police and through the courts, we try to just go out there and try to contact people and see, hey, you know, we don't want to turn you in, we don't want to get you arrested, we're just trying to find out how many victims we have out there. And so it's another way of just trying to get statistics so we can find out how many actual victims we have out there. Oops, I clicked on the website, so I didn't mean to do that. So let's get back to the PowerPoint. All right, the National Victimization Survey started in 1972. It does differ from the Uniform Crime Report because it consists of information elicited through interviews, contacting people directly at their households, rather than from just getting numbers from the police or from the courts. Data is gathered directly from the US Census Bureau, and then people contact these households, and they talk to people that are age 12 and up, and these interviews are done at about every 6 months. The interviewers are trained to talk to anybody that's over 12 years of age older, and it's considered really a superior method of measuring crime because it does include crimes that are not reported to the police. And the data that is collected covers more crimes and elicits more background information. Because if you remember, the UCR, the Uniform Crime Report, only talks about Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. So it's only collecting certain data that's entered into the computer, where the National Victimization Survey covers pretty much everything. If you tell the person that's interviewing you about a crime, it's going to capture it. All right, so what are some other findings when we're looking at juveniles and crime? All right, we find that youth between the ages of 16 and 19 had the highest victimization rate than any other group in the survey for violent crimes. So they're the ones that are actually at the most risk. Adolescents were more likely to commit violent crimes against their peers than adults. And the probability of victimization varies with the type of crime and place of residence. If you were in the city center, you would experience a higher level of violent crime. And that's probably just because in the city center, you have a higher level of concentration of people. There's also, of course, limitations of the victimization surveys, as well as there's always limitations. Some of that was the information on status offenses are not included. So your status offenses, again, that's something that only a juvenile can commit, such as staying out past curfew or minor in possession of alcohol. Victims may forget things that they've experienced because, you know, they only come around every 6 months, or maybe you weren't there when they came around last 6 months, so it's been a while. And victims may mistakenly state that they were a victim of crime even though they weren't. All right, so what are the differences between a self-report study and a cohort study? So a self-report study asked juveniles about offenses they committed in a previous time period. Cohort studies identify every juvenile born in a certain time frame in a particular city and then follow them for many years. So again, self-report studies ask juveniles to tell about offenses they have committed in a previous time period, where cohort studies identify every juvenile born in a certain time frame in a particular city and then follow them for many years. So why are self-report studies important, and what are their findings? Self-reports tell us a significant amount of crime goes undetected in the United States. Kind of scary, huh? That middle-class juveniles are involved in a considerable amount of crime. That hidden delinquency hides a large number of hidden crimes not discovered by police. That the crime gap between white and African Americans is smaller than official statistics indicate. And that girls commit more delinquent acts than are reported in official statistics. All right, so what are cohort studies and why are they important? So cohort studies often examine larger groups of people, all of whom were born in a specified time period. They do not rely on institutionalized population for data. And they eliminate many confounding social variables that may affect study findings. And what are some of the findings of cohort studies? Well, for the progression of crimes, they find that according to a cohort study conducted of 1,517 youth in Pittsburgh, the offending by boys involved in serious offenses occurred by age 15. And in the same study, it was found that boys developed disruptive and delinquent behavior in a fairly ordered manner from less serious to more serious crime. So pretty amazing that the progression of crime pretty much went up in a fairly ordered manner. And with gangs and crime, a cohort study in Rochester, New York found a strong link between delinquency and gang membership. Also, associating with delinquent peers was strongly correlated with delinquent activity. And of course, we do have limitations of cohort studies. The findings cannot be generalized beyond the people in the cohort. And they are extremely expensive and time consuming. All right, and this is just another link to the video. All right, what are the dimensions of law violating behaviors? We have the age of onset, escalation of number of offenses, the specialization of offenses, the desistance from the crime, and the transition to adult crime. And what is the age of onset? The age of onset is the age at which juveniles start their law violating behaviors. One study found that as the age of onset increased, the average number of offenses decreased. Another study found that offending at an early age was one factor that predicted who became a chronic offender. So the earlier somebody started basically committing crimes, it predicted if they were going to be more into committing crimes as they got older. Still, another study reported that those convicted of offending at the earliest ages, like at 10, 11, or 12 years old, offended at a higher rate and for longer periods of time. So what does the escalation of offenses mean? The escalation of offenses increase in the number of crimes committed by an individual. Official statistics reveal that the incidence of an arrest accelerates at age 13 and levels off at 17. However, this pattern is less evident in self-reports. So what is meant by the specialization of offenses? Well, the specialization of offenses is the tendency to repeat one type of crime. So if I like to break into houses, which is burglary of a house, then I'm going to burglarize houses. Findings do not consistently show specialization among delinquent offenders. However, one study did find that the status offenders were typically referred to the juvenile court 50 to 70% of the time for the same offense, which kind of makes sense. If you like to break into houses, you kind of get good at it. However, if I was walking to go break into a house and I saw a car running and nobody was around, I might just steal that car. So there still is crimes of opportunity that I might commit and get away with, but I'm still going to break the law with a crime that I'm comfortable with. And female status offenders were most frequently referred for running away. What is meant by desistance from crime? Well, desistance from crime is the termination of delinquency. So it's when I stop doing the crime. It's hard to measure exactly when a person stops offending. I mean, is it when they move away, or is it when they decide to stop doing the crime because they get a job or they start a family or they get arrested? Theories regarding desistance include growing up and just getting older, cognitive shifts, just deciding, hey, it's not worth it, it costs too much, or I'm just getting too old, or I just want to be good, I don't want to do that anymore. And I want to make good choices. I want to go to college or join the military. Describe the transition to adult crime. So what is that transition related to? It's when juveniles who commit juvenile crime continue to commit crime, but as adults. The earlier that juveniles start, the more likely they are continue to commit crimes as adults. So what is childhood victimization and what are its types? The numbers of children victimized. Reports have indicated that the maltreatment of children has increased by 155% between 1980 and 1993. Childhood victimization leveled off between 1994 and 99, but started to again increase in the new millennium. There were almost 3 million reports of abuse in 1,000. Many states require certain professions, such as teachers, doctors, police, to report child abuse. And there are categories of maltreatment. In neglect, 60%. Physical abuse, 18%. Sexual abuse, 10%. Emotional mistreatment, 5%. Others, 15%, which can include abandonment, drug addiction, and medical neglect. There's also types of violence. Homicide is the most common victimization. 79% of child murder victims were likely killed by their parents. Females were twice as likely to be killed by a family member than by males. Children under 8 were most likely to die of neglect. And children over 8 were more likely to die from physical or sexual abuse. Young children were more likely to die at the hands of a family member, while older children were more likely to be murdered by non-family members. What are the parameters of in-school victimization? According to the Uniform Crime data, crime in school dropped from the mid-1990s through 2002. 5% of all students report victimization. Violent victimization is greater out of school than in school. Less than 1% of students experience violent victimizations. The types of victimizations. Theft is committed at a rate of 45 out of 1,000 students. Violent crimes is committed at a rate of 28 out of 1,000 students. Serious violent crime is committed at a rate of 3 out of 1,000 students. Types of schools in which found. Urban schools found experience greater crime than rural schools. All right, so that ends that. Does anybody have any questions? Some sad data near the end, I have to say. And to kind of end off on that data, I am teaching in the spring for the first time a human trafficking class. It's going to be a CCJ 399, which is going to be an elective class. It's the first time, and that's because of the numbers of human trafficking and how huge the numbers are getting right now and what a huge issue it is. It's really sad, and the abuse and all that's going on right now. I've been doing a lot of research into it, so it's sad, but there's a lot of light that can be brought on to it and a lot of things that we can actually do and that we're going to do in this class. So if you have any interest in learning more about that, I highly recommend you look into that. Like I said, it's going to be offered in the spring. So does anybody have any questions about this topic? We're going to continue on Thursday about it, and we'll do a study review for the final, and it will be our last class on Thursday. All right, you guys. Well, everybody have a great